Berlin, 6th of March 1944, 11:47 a.m. The air over the city is so cold that breath freezes on the inside of windows, yet the operations room beneath the Zoo Flak Tower feels like a boiler room. Dozens of uniformed men and women crowd around the long tables, their faces lit from below by the greenish glow of radar screens and the red lamps of plot boards. The only sounds are the low hum of ventilators, the scratch of grease pencils, and the occasional nervous cough. Obergefreiter Klaus Merton, 22 years old and already going bald from stress, sits at Seeberg Table 3. His headphones clamp his skull like a vice grips. For the last 40 minutes, he has been tracking the incoming stream. 658 four-engine contacts, plus supporting groups, total strength approaching 800 heavy bombers. The numbers are so large that the plotting officers have run out of colored arrows and have begun using plain wooden blocks instead. The table now looks like a child's game played by giants. Merton's scope shows something else, however. Something that makes the skin on the back of his neck tighten. Small, fast returns detached from the bomber boxes, yet traveling at the same ground speed. They hold position 50 kilometers behind and 5,000 meters above the main force. Staggered in layers like wolves flanking a herd, they have no intention of rushing. He has watched these contacts for almost 200 kilometers now, ever since the stream crossed the Dutch coast. Every minute that passes makes their presence more impossible. He tees his microphone. Zentrale, this is post ML3. I have multiple single-engine fighters still with the main force range now 580 kilometers from East Anglian bases. Repeat 580 kilometers request confirmation. The reply comes back laced with static and disbelief. Say again, Email 3. You are reporting escort fighters at that distance. Confirmed. Contacts are solid. Speed 420 miles per hour indicated. Height estimated 8,500 meters and climbing. A long pause. Then a different voice. Older, sharper. All stations, this is Major von Lossberg. No Allied single-engine fighter possesses that radius of action. The contacts are almost certainly British Mosquito Pathfinders or window-dropping decoys. Ignore them and concentrate on the bomber stream. Merton does not ignore them. He has seen mosquitoes. Mosquitoes do not fly in packs of 64, stacked in perfect combat spreads. Mosquitoes do not climb like homesick angels the moment they sense German controllers looking at them. At 12:07, the first visual confirmations begin to flood in from the forward observer posts along the Elbe. A lieutenant in Magdeburg reports long-nosed fighters with inline engines and bubble canopies circling above the bombers as if on parade. A flak battery near Brandenburg identifies the unmistakable radiator scoop of the Packard Merlin. By 12:19, the code word Langstreckенjäger, long-range fighters, has been spoken aloud in every command post from Denmark to the Alps. In the map room at Luftwaffe High Command on the Kurfürstendamm, General Major Adolf Galland stands alone, is not surprised. He has been expecting this moment for months, ever since the first intelligence summaries about drop tanks and the new laminar flow Mustang reached his desk. He simply did not expect it to arrive so soon, or in such overwhelming numbers. Galland is 42 years old, slight of build, with the face of a man who has smiled too rarely for too long. His eyes are the pale blue of northern ice, and they do not blink as he studies the wall map. Red arrows now stretch in an unbroken line from England to the outskirts of Berlin. Beside the arrows, someone has written in neat chalk, "Escort confirmed P-51, drop tanks observed." An aide approaches at a half-run. Her general, the Reichsmarschall, is on the secure line from Karenhall. He demands to know why we have not yet intercepted. Galland's answer is quiet, almost conversational. Because, Hauptmann, the enemy is already 300 kilometers inside our fighter belt, and our fighters are still on the ground refueling from this morning's sorties. By the time we climb to altitude, the bombers will be dropping on Berlin, and the Mustangs will be sitting above us at 30,000 feet with full tanks and warm guns. The aide pales. Shall I tell him that? Tell him whatever keeps him calm. Then order every group within 500 kilometers launched immediately. No reserves, no rotation, everything that will fly. Galland turns back to the map. He does not need to look at the production charts pinned beside it to know the arithmetic by heart. In February, the American aircraft industry delivered 1,130 single-engine fighters. German industry delivered 317, of which barely 200 reached frontline units. The Americans train 9,000 new pilots every 4 months. The Luftwaffe is down to 6 weeks of fuel for training and falling. He lights a cigarette with steady fingers. The smoke curls upward like a miniature contrail. High above the city, the first American bombers cross the outer flak belt. The sky is so clear that civilians on the streets of Charlottenburg can see the sun glinting off thousands of wings. The contrails are no longer thin scratches now. They form a vast white lattice that stretches from horizon to horizon, as though some god has dragged his fingernails across the heavens. In the zoo bunker, the radar operators have stopped arguing about glitches. They simply watch the small, fast echoes peel away from the mainstream and begin a slow, deliberate climb toward the sun. The Mustang pilots are not hurrying. They have all the time in the world and all the sky. At 12:37 p.m., the Berlin Defense Command duty officer picks up the red telephone that connects directly to the Führer bunker. His voice is flat, almost bored, as though he is reporting the weather. Enemy bomber stream now 70 kilometers west of the city center. Full escort of long-range fighters confirmed overhead. P-51 Mustangs with auxiliary tanks. They are in visual contact with our capital. He listens for a moment, then hangs up without saluting. Across the city, air raid sirens begin their long, rising wail. It is a sound Berliners have heard 100 times before, but today it carries a different note, something between warning and funeral bell. Galland stubs out his cigarette and reaches for his leather flying jacket. The Knight's Cross at his throat feels suddenly heavy, as though it has begun to understand what is coming. But within minutes, the illusion of German air power would shatter, and the truth would descend from 25,000 feet. The corridor outside the map room smells of wet wool, machine oil, and fear. Adolf Galland walks it slowly, boots echoing on the terrazzo like a metronome counting down to 0. Men flatten themselves against the walls as he passes. Some salute, some simply stare. They know who he is. They also know what he knows. He stops at a small side office no larger than a confessional. Inside, a single lamp burns over a desk buried beneath folders stamped Geheim. On the wall hangs a photograph taken in 1940. Galland, younger, laughing, surrounded by the tail of his Bf 109, the scoreboard freshly painted with the 50th victory bar. Next to it, pinned with a bayonet, is a single sheet of paper dated 1st March 1944. American aircraft production, January totals. The numbers are typed in merciless black. 1,323 single-engine fighters accepted, 872 twin-engine, 1,047 four-engine heavies, total 4,287 combat aircraft in 31 days. Underneath, in Galland's neat handwriting, a second line. Reich industry, same period. 1,114 total aircraft, all types including trainers. He stares at the paper the way a condemned man stares at the noose. Then he closes the door behind him and sits. For a long minute he does nothing except listen to the muffled thunder growing in the distance, the sound of 800 sets of 4 engines marching across the sky in perfect formation so tight it looks, from the ground, like a single silver organism. Galland's mind travels backward, the way it always does when the present becomes unbearable. He remembers 1937, flying with the Condor Legion over Guernica, the sheer joy of the dive, the way the Messerschmitt seemed to read his thoughts before fingers moved. He remembers the Battle of France when a single swarm of 109s could scatter 50 French fighters like sparrows. He remembers England in 1940, the Channel glittering below, the Spitfires rising to meet them, the exhilaration of discovering an enemy that fought with the same ferocity of equals. And he remembers the exact day the music began to slow. November 1942. El Alamein and Stalingrad in the same week. The first American B-17s over Wilhelmshaven, shrugging off 20mm shells the way elephants shrug off bee stings. The day he realized that quantity was becoming a quality of its own. He opens a drawer and takes out a small notebook bound in black leather. Inside are columns of figures he has kept since 1941. Monthly pilot graduations, fuel allocations, aircraft deliveries, combat losses. The columns for 1941 and 1942 still climb like church spires. From 1943 onward, they flatten, then slope downward, with the inevitability of a glacier. He turns to the last page. March 1944 is still blank, but he already knows what will be written there. Today alone will cost the Jagdwaffe between 60 and 100 pilots. Most of them will be boys with fewer than 50 hours on type. Some will have fewer than 10. Their bodies will fall across half of northern Germany, and there will be no replacements waiting in the schools because the schools have run out of petrol. He closes the notebook and looks again at the photograph on the wall. The younger Galland is smiling because he still believes that skill and courage can multiply force. The older Galland knows better. Skill and courage are finite. Aluminium, high-octane gasoline, and young American farm boys who grew up fixing tractors are not. The telephone on the desk rings. He lets it ring 4 times before lifting the receiver. Galland. It is Colonel Johannes Steinhoff, commanding JG-77 on the Eastern Front, voice hoarse with fatigue. Adolf, I've been ordered to transfer 2 Gruppen West immediately. That leaves me 36 serviceable aircraft to cover the entire Crimea. Am I to fight the Red Air Force with harsh language? Galland exhales slowly. Do what you can, Johannes. The West is where the war will be decided now. A bitter laugh. You mean lost? Galland does not contradict him. After he hangs up, he sits in silence a little longer. Then he opens the bottom drawer and takes out a bottle of Armagnac, a gift from a French pilot he shot down over Calais in 1940. The Frenchmen had survived, parachuted into the Channel, and sent the bottle 2 years later with a note. To the victor, until we meet again. They never did. Galland pours 2 fingers into a coffee cup and drinks it without tasting. The warmth spreads through his chest, but it does not reach the cold place behind his sternum. He thinks about the P-51 again. Not the airplane itself, beautiful as it is, but what it represents. The Mustang pilots take off from East Anglia with 375 gallons of fuel, 2 drop tanks under the wings, another 85 in the fuselage if they want it. They can loiter over Berlin for 90 minutes, fight for 30, and still have enough to fly home, land, refuel, and do it again tomorrow. A German pilot is lucky to get 20 minutes over the target before his tanks run dry, and he must break off or die. It is not a contest of men anymore. It is a contest of empires. He remembers a conversation with Erhard Milch in January. Milch, ever the optimist, had boasted that the new Heinkel 219 night fighter would restore parity. Galland had asked politely how many Chi-219s the Reich intended to build in 1944. Milch's answer: 400, perhaps 450 if everything went perfectly. 450 aircraft against 9,000 American fighters. Galland had not laughed. He had simply stared until Milch looked away. Now the door opens without a knock. It is Major Gerhard Michalski, his adjutant, eyes red from lack of sleep. Herr General, the first units are taking off. JG-11 from Wunstorf, JG-1 from Rheine, the Sturmgruppe from Salzwedel. Total scramble strength 212 aircraft. Fuel state critical on 43 of them. Galland nods. And the Americans? Still on course, ETA over the city 29 minutes. Galland stands. He is not a tall man, but the room seems to shrink around him. Patch me through to the lead, Rotten, as they form up. I want to speak to them myself. Michalski hesitates. All of them? Every single pilot who is about to die for a sky we no longer own. He walks past the younger officer without waiting for the bottle of Armagnac in the drawer, the notebook of descending columns, the photograph of a man who still believed in miracles. Outside, the first Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs are clawing for altitude, their engines straining against gravity and winter air. From the ground they look brave, almost noble. From 30,000 feet they will look like moths climbing toward a furnace. Germany's aces were still fighting, but the factories behind them were dying. Altitude 26,000 feet, 12:51 p.m. The sun is a white coin hammered flat against the cobalt dome above Germany. Below, the bomber stream rolls eastward in imperfect boxes. B-17s and B-24s stacked in layers like silver bricks. Their contrails braid and rebraid, forming a highway in the sky that points straight at the heart of the Reich. 60 kilometers ahead of them, the first German fighters break through the cloud deck and begin the long climb to intercept altitude. There are almost 250 of them now. Every Bf-109 and FW-190 that could be dragged into the air, strung out in ragged group and climbing at full emergency power. Their engines scream with strain. Their pilots' mouths are dry inside oxygen masks. Most have not eaten since yesterday. Many have not slept. In the lead 109 of IACE, JG-11, Hauptmann Fritz Losigkeit checks his fuel gauge and feels the familiar twist in his stomach. He has 400 liters remaining, barely enough for the climb and one firing pass. After that, he will be a glider with guns. He glances left and right at his wingmen, boys he has never flown with for less than 2 weeks, and keys the microphone. Stay tight. We go in together, hit the flank boxes, then break downward. No heroics. Acknowledge. The replies come back thin and nervous. Zwei verstanden? Drei verstanden. Far above them, the P-51 Mustangs have been waiting for 20 minutes. They orbit in loose, lazy circles at 31,000 feet, 8 abreast in each squadron, 4 squadrons to a group, 8 groups in total. More than 350 Mustangs, their wings glittering like knives in the sun. Their pilots are warm, well-fed, and singing over the radio. Some chew gum, some smoke. All of them have full tanks and orders to destroy anything that climbs. Major James Howard, commanding the 356th Fighter Group, rolls his Mustang inverted for a better look downward. Through the clear bubble canopy, he can see the German fighters climbing toward him in long, desperate strings. Jesus, look at 'em come, he drawls over the command frequency. Like ants to a picnic. His wingman, Captain Chuck Yeager, laughs softly. Ants with guns, boss, let's not get bit. Howard thumbs his mic. All Mustang groups, this is Red Leader. Bandits climbing through 24,000, heading 090. We'll take the high 6. Drop tanks on my mark. Let's go remind 'em why they stopped coming to England in daylight. 350 drop tanks tumble away in perfect unison, glinting as they fall. The Mustangs roll over and dive. On the ground, Galland stands on the balcony of the control tower at Jüterbog Airfield, binoculars pressed to his eyes. He watches the German formation struggle upward, then sees the American dive begin, a silver avalanche pouring out of the sun. The geometry is perfect, merciless. The Mustangs will hit the German climb at a closing speed of nearly 900 kilometers per hour, with an altitude advantage of 5,000 feet and full energy. He lowers the binoculars. There is nothing to say. In the air, the first contact is almost gentle. A swarm of 4 FW-190s from IV JG-3 crests 27,000 feet and suddenly finds itself surrounded by 8 Mustangs that simply appear out of nowhere. The German leader never even transmits. 2 P-51s roll in from astern, guns winking. Tracers arc like golden rain. The lead 190 bursts into flame and falls away, trailing a black ribbon of smoke. The second is stitched from spinner to tail. The canopy flies off and the pilot tumbles out, limp, already dead. The remaining 2 break frantically in opposite directions and are chased down within seconds. Across a front 50 kilometers wide, the same scene repeats again and again. The Mustangs do not dogfight. They bounce, fire, extend, climb, bounce again. Their Merlin engines give them speed at altitude the German radial and inline engines can only dream of. Their pilots have been trained to fight in pairs and fours, not the way the Luftwaffe taught the world to fight in 1940. Now the student has become the master. Lieutenant Heinz Snoke, one of the few experienced pilots still alive in JG-1, leads his group in a head-on pass against a box of B-17s. For a moment, he believes he has achieved surprise. Then his earphones explode with frantic cries. Achtung, Indianer oben, Mustangs from Sun. He snaps his head back and sees them, 16 P-51s inverted, diving straight at him. He yells, "Break!" but it is too late. The sky fills with tracers. His wingman's 109 simply disintegrates in an orange flash. Noak hauls his stick into his stomach and dives vertically, engine screaming past redline. A Mustang follows effortlessly. Noak can see the American pilot's face behind the goggles, calm, almost bored. The Mustang fires 1-second burst removes Noak's left wing at the root. The 109 flips onto its back and falls like a stone. Noak fights the canopy open and is sucked out at 400 miles per hour. His parachute opens just in time to watch the rest of his group shredded above him. On the radio net, the voices overlap in rising panic. I've got 2 on my tail. Fuel leak. Losing power. Anyone see Hannes? Static. More static. In the zoo bunker, the radar operators watch the German symbols blink out one after another. Someone begins to weep quietly. No one tells him to stop. Galland stands on the balcony until the sky is empty of German fighters. The bombers drone on toward Berlin, unmolested now. Flak bursts blossom black and futile around them. The Mustangs circle above like vultures that have already eaten their fill. He lowers the binoculars. His hands are perfectly steady, but inside his chest, something has quietly broken. The Mustangs weren't just superior, they were everywhere. Jüterbog Airfield, 13:14 p.m. The wind across the concrete is sharp enough to cut flesh. Galland walks alone toward the line of revetments where the last 3 airworthy Bf-109 G6AS of his personal Stabschwarm wait. The ground crews stand at attention, faces gray with exhaustion and the certain knowledge that they are arming coffins. The aircraft assigned to him is new, delivered only yesterday from Wiener Neustadt. Its camouflage is still factory fresh, the yellow Reichsverteidigung band around the rear fuselage almost luminous. On the rudder, the ground crew has already chalked 103 and 104 in anticipation of victories that will never come. Galland looks at the numbers for a long moment, then climbs the wing without a word. The airlock canopy is spotless. Inside, the cockpit smells of fresh paint and high-octane fuel. He straps in slowly, deliberately, the way a man dresses for his own funeral. When the crew chief offers the starter cartridge, Galland waves him away and primes the Daimler-Benz himself. The big engine catches on the third blade, settles into a deep, uneven growl. Prop wash flattens the grass beyond the perimeter track. He taxis out alone. The other 2 pilots of the Schwarm have already taken off to join the hopeless melee. Galland refused their escort. This is not a combat sortie. It is reconnaissance of the grave. Cleared for immediate takeoff, he opens the throttle wide. The 109 surges forward, tail up almost instantly, then lifts into the cold air as if relieved to leave the earth. He retracts the gear, sets climb power, and turns east toward the smoke already rising over Berlin. At 8,000 meters, the sky is suddenly shockingly empty. No bombers, no fighters, only the vast white highway of contrails stretching to the horizon and the black petals of flak drifting below like burnt paper. The city is taking its punishment. He can see the target markers glowing red through the haze, the neat patterns of bombs walking across the center. Then he sees the Mustangs. They are everywhere and nowhere. Silver motes drifting in and reforming with lazy grace. A squadron passes beneath him at a closing speed he cannot hope to match. So close he can read the 356th Fighter Group markings and the name Gloria Jean painted under the cockpit of the leader. The American pilot looks up, sees the lone 109, and waggles his wings in mocking salute before rolling away. Galland pushes the throttle through the gate, MW-50 boost howling. The 109 shudders, accelerates to 680 km per hour, but the distance only widens. The Mustang pilot never even bothers to increase power. Galland climbs higher, chasing the thin blue where oxygen thins and engines gasp. At 9,500 meters, he spots a straggler, an FTU-190 limping west with half a wing shot away, trailing glycol. 2 Mustangs are circling it the way cats circle a wounded bird. As Galland watches, one of the Americans closes to the rear, fires a lazy deflection shot, and the Focke-Wulf folds in midair like a broken toy. The radio, which has been a bedlam of screams and static, suddenly falls silent. No more calls for help. No more frantic position reports. Only the soft hiss of an empty channel. Galland levels at 10,000 meters and flies a slow circle above the burning city. From here, Berlin looks small, almost fragile, wrapped in its own smoke. He can see the bombers turning for home now, their formation still perfect, still unmolested. The Mustangs reform above and behind them like sheepdogs guiding the flock back to England. He tries a gentle turn to the left. The 109 responds sluggishly. Ice is already forming on the wings. He realizes his hands are numb inside the gloves, not from cold but from the simple, crushing weight of what he is witnessing. He teased the microphone once, out of habit. Any Jagdwaffe aircraft, this is Adler. Report position and status. Nothing answers, not a single voice. He tries again. Yafu Mitte, this is General Galland. Request damage assessment. The reply when it comes is from a woman at the zoo bunker, her voice thin and shaking. Herr General, 81 pilots have reported safe returns so far. 23 aircraft landed elsewhere. The rest are unaccounted for. 81 out of 250. Galland closes his eyes for a second. When he opens them, a single Mustang is flying formation on his starboard wing, 500 meters away. The American pilot is close enough that Galland can see him clearly. Young, maybe 22, chewing gum, one hand resting casually on the canopy rail. He lifts two fingers in ironic salute, then peels away upward in a perfect victory roll that the 109 could never follow. Galland does not return the salute. He simply banks west and begins the long descent toward Jagdflieger. The engine coughs once as fuel runs low, then steadies. The silence on the radio is absolute now, a silence deeper than any Galland has ever known in 6 years of war. It is the sound of an air force dying in real time, of boys burning and falling unheard. He lowers the nose and flies through the smoke rising from Berlin. The smell of it seeps into the cockpit, cordite and burning wood, and something sweeter, more terrible. He does not try to name it. For the first time, Galland felt what defeat sounded like, silence on the radio. Jagdflieger Airfield, 14:47 p.m. The sun is already sliding westward, bleeding pale gold across the snow-dusted pines. Galland's 109 touches down hard, tires smoking, propeller ticking as it cools. The runway is littered with debris, a shredded drop tank, a parachute half burned, a lone wheel still spinning slowly as if trying to escape what happened above them. He climbs down without waiting for the crew chief. His legs feel borrowed. Ground crew stare at him, waiting for orders that will not come. He walks past them, past the silent hangars, past the rows of empty dispersals where aircraft should be but are not. In the operations hut, a field telephone is already ringing. He knows who it is before he lifts the receiver. Galland. The voice on the other end is thick with rage and cognac. Hermann Göring, Reichsmarschall of the Greater German Reich, master of an air that no longer belongs to him. Galland, explain this catastrophe. My headquarters tells me the capital was bombed in broad daylight and our fighters were brushed aside like flies. I was assured the new armored Sturmgruppen would tear the Jagdflieger apart. Instead, I hear nothing but excuses and American engines over my ears cannot unhear. Galland waits until the shouting stops. When he speaks, his voice is quiet, almost conversational, the tone a surgeon uses when delivering a death sentence. Herr Reichsmarschall, the enemy brought more than 800 heavy bombers and nearly 400 long-range fighters. The P-51 with drop tanks has a combat radius greater than anything in our inventory. They engaged us at altitudes and speeds we cannot match. We committed every available aircraft within 500 kilometers. In return, we lost, at last count, 112 pilots killed or missing and 74 aircraft destroyed. The Americans lost 17 bombers and 8 of them to flak. 17, Herr Reichsmarschall. Their factories will replace those aircraft before breakfast tomorrow. Ours will not replace the pilots in this lifetime. Silence swells on the line like a bruise. Göring's voice drops to a dangerous whisper. Are you telling me, General, that the Luftwaffe is finished? Galland looks out of the window. A lone Fiesler Stork is landing, bringing the first wounded pilot back from a forced landing near Potsdam. The boy's face is black with burns. I am telling you what the sky already told us today. The defensive fighter force no longer possesses the reach, the numbers, or the performance to prevent the enemy from striking any target in the Reich at will. From this afternoon forward, the war in the air is a matter of arithmetic, and the Americans own the only calculator. Another silence. Then Göring, almost pleading now, there must be something, the Me-262, the new rockets. The Me-262 is still months away from squadron service, and even if we had 1,000 today, we have neither the fuel nor the pilots to fly them. The war we are fighting now will be over before the jet can change a single equation. The line clicks dead. Göring has hung up. Galland sets the receiver down gently, as though it might explode. Outside, the light is failing. The sky that only hours ago was ruled by contrails is now empty, except for the slow drift of smoke from Berlin 30 kilometers away. He walks to the map room. The grease pencil lines have been wiped clean. Someone has begun drawing tomorrow's expected raid with a trembling hand. Galland studies the blank spaces where German fighter symbols used to be. Later that night, the final tallies come in. Luftwaffe losses, 6 March 1944. 64 pilots killed, 27 wounded, 81 aircraft destroyed, 56 in air combat, 25 to flak or accident. Percentage of committed force lost, 41%. 8th Air Force losses, 69 bombers, mostly to flak, 11 fighters, most surviving aircraft repairable within days. In Detroit, North American Aviation's assembly lines are already rolling the 4,000th P-51 off the floor. In California, Douglas and Boeing are doing the same with Liberators and Fortresses. In Texas and Oklahoma, 10,000 young men are learning to fly before they have learned to drive. In Germany, the last advanced flying school closed for lack of fuel 2 weeks ago. Galland sits alone in the darkening room and lights a cigarette with the last match in the box. He thinks about the silence on the radio this afternoon. How complete it was. How final. He thinks about the American pilot who saluted him from 500 meters away, the casual confidence in the gesture. He thinks about the boys who will never come back, and the even younger boys who will be sent up tomorrow to replace them, and the day after, and the day after that, until there are no more boys. He thinks about the sky over Berlin, once the exclusive domain of the Black Cross, now ruled by white stars and long, perfect contrails that stretch all the way back to factories that never sleep. And for the first time in his life, Adolf Galland, holder of the Diamonds to the Knight's Cross, 104 Victory Ace, General der Jagdflieger, feels something he has never felt in 6 years of war. Not anger, not even sorrow, just certainty. On March 6, 1944, the sky over Berlin told the truth. Germany had already lost. If you believe forgotten turning points deserve to be told, subscribe for more untold World War II history.